Welcome, everybody, to Nokia, Finland. It is major time once again here in the 2023 disc golf season. It's the European Open. It's Tournament Central time. Nate Perkins, Brian Earhart, we're here. Nate, we have to talk first off. Yesterday, President's Cup, one of the windier days that we had ever seen out here at the Beast. This morning, a little bit different. What do you think?
Well, first, Brian, I just have to say how happy I am to be here. I walk onto this property. It's my third year being here in Nokia, and there's just something special about this place. When you arrive, you're almost underwhelmed because it's just a little city park. Mm-hmm. This park is not strictly disc golf. You know, the tournament headquarters is actually a hockey rink, but when you step onto the course and you start playing these iconic holes is when it really hits you. And like you said, all week, including yesterday at the President's Cup, it's been windy. Practice has been tough. Players were saying 4 and 5 under were really good scores. And today we arrived at the course and there's not a single bit of wind, is there? The Finnish flags are just standing still and it is eerily calm right now.
Well, what's interesting is the players all give immense respect to the conditions out here because they know how challenging some of the really important holes out here play when the wind picks up or the rain starts to fall. And both of those things are in at least the forecast. But for now, the players have pretty solid scoring conditions. Temperature is down, wind is down. Everything feels very still out here. We do have to say one thing before we get into the competitors this week. The person that's not going to be here, that's not competing, the defending champion, Paige Pierce. Nate, Paige tragically broke her ankle in kind of a freak accident in Norway. Can you talk about what happened and how is she doing currently?
You know, Brian, when I first heard that Paige broke her ankle, I pictured her playing catch with Kevin and Luke and maybe diving off of a waterfall or something in Norway, but it was just there on the course. She was walking across a bridge, slipped 8:30 in the morning, and super unfortunate. I did just speak with her, and she just had her consultation for her surgery. She is set to have surgery next Tuesday in Florida near her home. And one thing that the doctors did say was that Paige should actually call Norway and thank them for the job that they did setting her ankle, because they expressed that often with this type of injury, it doesn't get set properly and they have to go into surgery right away. So as bad as things are pretty optimistic from the surgeon's point of view. And so Paige was looking at a minimum of 10 weeks with no physical activity. And so that means that she's probably not going to play again this season, and we hope to have her back by the spring. But I think we're all kind of missing not just the person, of course we're missing our friend Paige, but the past champion. Mm-hmm. You know, it's weird to play the tournament without the person who took it down last year.
Well, and has taken this tournament down in demanding fashion, but the person that is looking for a European championship here is Kristin Tattar, who is on a historic run, 8th win last week in Norway at the PCS Open. You were there. What did you see from her that week, and just in general, speak on her season?
Yeah, I mean, Kristin has had an incredible season. I think that this is really the year where when she doesn't win, we're all kind of wondering, like, what happened, you know? And they ask us here on Tournament Central, hey, talk about what happened. Ask Kristin, why didn't you win? You know, there's just this high expectation that everybody has for her. And, you know, last week at PCS, what I saw actually was inconsistency, Brian, and she still took it down. And when we go and look at the stats, Kristin didn't lead any significant stats. She led scramble, but everything else, she was 4th, she was 6th, she was 3rd. She didn't lead any of the stats, and she was struggling off the tee. She questioned her release point with both the backhand and the forehand, and we saw her miss more circle 1 putts in the first 2 rounds than we've seen all year long. So the fact that she was still able to edge Missy Gannon out for the win, it says a lot about her willpower, even when things aren't going her way.
And that's what a consistent champion has to do, and we've seen that time and time again over the years on the Disc Golf Pro Tour at the PDGA Majors. We did hear from Kristin earlier in the week, and she spoke about this very thing. Let's hear what she had to say.
every shot is crucial here to not mess up. And I just try to build up that confidence and not let anything just bring me down. Even though this year they have shortened some of the holes, I feel like still quite a lot of distance is required on some of these shots. But mostly you have to be extremely accurate. Keep the disc in bounce. It's been very windy, so I think we have to use a lot of overstable discs. So yeah, just being really focused and reading the wind right will be the main challenge.
Well, very simple explanation there from Kristin. It's always focused for her. That's the only thing she's really dialed in on. It's not like she's talking about, oh, I need to change this thing specifically in my game. She knows where her game is at, and it just takes executing that skill set. You watched some phenomenal forehands come out yesterday. I mean, you talked about tee shots at PCS, but now yesterday at the President's Cup, she looked pretty under control.
Yeah, I mean, if we go to hole 2 here at the Beast, it's 381 feet. And it's a left to right shaped fairway. It's shaped up perfect for a power forehand, and it's kind of a true test of how your forehand is. It's the second hole out the gate, so you don't get much time to warm up, if any, with the backhand on one. So Kristin birdied hole 2 and hole 9 yesterday with the power forehand, and that alone says a lot about where she's at with the 12 speed right now.
Well, she had mentioned to you after her win at PCS that she was looking forward to working through these frustrations that she had in Norway, and I guarantee you with the major upon us, she's ready to take one down here in Nokia. We are going to take a quick commercial break. On the other side, another player who has been playing phenomenally this season in the FPO division, Silva Saarinen. We'll see you soon.
What's up, guys? I'm here at the European Open, and I want to remind you to go check out the European Open online pro shop to check out some exclusive discs, merchandise, apparel, and so much more. Thank you for supporting the event, and enjoy the show.
A round of disc golf can be long, and if you're playing in a tournament, it can feel like a marathon. This can leave you physically and mentally fatigued by the end when your shots matter most. With space for your discs, water, and even a place to sit, a cart enables you to bring what you need, helping you feel more prepared and energized without carrying the extra weight. This can help you maintain your edge and save you strokes through every round.
Welcome back. Another player on the Euro Tour who has been playing phenomenal this season, Silva Saarinen, looking for a major title. Nate, you've been over here in Europe covering disc golf for a few weeks now, and you've watched Silva play. She came over to the States earlier this year, so we saw quite a bit of her. What are your thoughts on her as a player, and what are her chances out here this week?
Well, we've seen Silva in the past, and she's always been able to, shape discs off the tee, and she's always been, above average putter. But this year, she's taken that putt to new heights. She's played 3 Euro Tour events this year, and she's won all 3 of them. And she's won them in dominant fashion. And when you watch her play, she's one of those players that she's just not expressing emotion. She steps up to the putts. Doesn't matter if it's a headwind putt with OB right behind, and she's chest open, standing up, and the way that she delivers those putts is so much confidence. She's one of those putters, Brian, where you watch her and you're like, I would tag her in for any one of my putts. You know, she kind of reminds me of a Missy Gannon or an Own, where she's just emanating confidence on the putting green. And I honestly feel like she's one of those. She's one of the contenders. She's one of the people that could put Kristin behind early and get her to start questioning herself.
Well, and currently, you know, like we saw last week at PCS, putting was the thing that kind of messed up the victory coming down the stretch for Missy Gannon. And she is one of those putters that we would probably tag in any situation. So I think what I'm looking forward to seeing is Silva getting herself in a position to make those putts under pressure and give herself that experience in these major situations to continue growing as an athlete. I mean, she has so much time. She has so much time in her career left as an athlete, and she's developing very quickly. I think, yet again, another player is popping up and entering that category of major contender, because who is winning these tournaments? It's great putters. That's who's winning, and the stats on the weekend always are telling on how well these players perform.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, and you know, one player that we have to kind of move into now, who just happened to find her putt last week, Brian, finally, is Eveliina Salonen. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's been a couple years since the European Championships. Eveliina lost her putt, and she's been struggling. She's been top 3 in tee to green now for the last three seasons, but she's been nearly dead last in Circle 1X putting. And last week we found that shift, and we got to listen to her tell us that she feels like it was the break. It was the time off. Her and Hina both had trouble with their visa, and instead of, you know, feeling bad for themselves, they took the time off, and they've been playing this other sport here in Finland called paddle. And Eveliina said that she feels like it gave her the mental reset that she needed.
Well, I think sometimes just a change of scenery is all you need. I mean, she has the skills. She's mentioned this previously. She knows that she has a good putting stroke in practice. She's able to put the disc in the basket. But really, mentally, when you have something like that, something you could call the yips formally, I believe it's called a focal dystonia when you talk about it across the board in all sorts of sports, it's hard to get around. It's a very strange thing to have to battle back from. But the fact is, she's still here. She podiumed last week at PCS. She hit a lot of fantastic putts down the stretch. If she can just keep the driving ability that she has backhand and forehand and just channel that a little bit this week and continue the momentum from PCS, I think she's going to have very good chances of taking down a major championship here. She did talk to us pretty candidly about everything. Let's hear what she had to say.
Putting, confidence, let's go into it. Are you feeling it? What are you telling yourself before you're letting go of the disc? Or is there anything?
Yeah, I just try to get my routine and focus on that, because I know that I have that skill on putting, but it's more mentally blocked. But yeah, try to be relaxed.
Is it easy to tell yourself to just treat the majors like every other tournament?
Usually yes, but in major in Finland it's always different, and I think I take a little bit more pressure on that, because of course I want to play well in front of like Finnish galleries.
Well, she mentioned that this means a lot to her with her living so close by. It's not easy to necessarily win a tournament on one of your home courses, let alone a major on one of your home courses. What do you think about that, Nate?
Well, what I think about Eveliina is just, I think hole 10 last year, Brian. Do you remember she started the tournament with 2 threes on that hole? She knows this course, and she knows how to shape the disc on this course. And if she can stay in that joyful state and deliver the putts, you know, without the fear behind it, I think that she is the second favorite behind Kristin.
Well, and with a 4-round event, there's a lot of up and downs that happen to every player, and sometimes the champion even goes through that roller coaster, maybe minus Kristin Tattar Champions Cup this year, but there's a lot of golf to play. You can falter early on and maybe even later in the tournament, but you have so many opportunities for greatness. And out here, there are so many stroke separator holes where if you just have a couple good days on them, maybe hole 16, for example, you can really separate yourself from the rest of the field, and even players that are beating most of the field throughout the week.
And do you remember Eveliina down the stretch last year with Paige there on 16? She went destroyer from almost 400 feet out and just like it was nothing, into the bullseye, put the pressure on Paige. She knows how to rise to the occasion when the pressure's high there in the final round. So I hope that Eveliina gets herself in the game early. That's one thing, just as the fan, as the the spectator this week as well. I don't want to see a runaway victory. I want to see pressure on Kristin. I want to see someone else with the lead because I felt like Kristin got the lead so early at Championship Cup, and it was almost just like, she was going through the motions, it felt like. So I want to see Eveliina, I want to see Silva, Missy, these players put the pressure on early so that it can really feel like a major.
Well, the Beast always tends to create that sort of dramatic nature, that, dramatic finishes out here happen seemingly every year. And with that said, we also have an MPO division going off this afternoon after one of the greatest battles that we've ever seen. We're going to talk about that after a quick commercial break.
In 40 yards, do not turn left or right. Just drive. You have reached your destination. You are home.
UPlay has been busy as ever lately. Let's check in with the impact they made a few weeks ago when the Disc Golf Pro Tour was at the Preserve.
Hey, I'm Ella Hansen. I'm UPlay's program director, and we are here at the Preserve. We got a bus full of Boys and Girls Club kids out here to do our community connect with. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Alex Sherdat. I am the Clearview site manager, which is about 5 miles down the road on Highway 24. And we had about, I would say, 30-ish kids today, and they were super excited about the chance to be with the pros.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We did putting, we did driving, we had some nice, fun distance demos from our professionals.
All right, so this is gonna be our last chance throwing. Make it good, make it good.
Do y'all think you're gonna keep doing disc golf with your kids?
As long as the Pro Tour comes back to Preserve, we will be here. Because our kids did so good, you could tell that they enjoyed it, and I think we got some future disc golfers on our hands.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome back. Last year, Nate, we saw some of the highest IQ disc golf potentially ever played. Paul MacBeth losing to Eagle McMahon, averaging over 1070 on the weekend. Just a back and forth masterpiece of resourcefulness, technicality, and obviously experience from both of these champions. Nate, relive the moment. What were you experiencing watching that?
Well, pure joy, and just thinking back on it, I still experience that. And you know, they set them up for another battle, because if you remember, they played on the same card every round. They played together, and by hole 15 of round one, they had the lead the rest of the time. Either Paul or Eagle did, and they've set it up for another McBattle, but we can only hope that we get a glimpse of that golf again, because that was the highest level golf out of both of those players, and we're talking about one of those players being the greatest of all time, and the current world champion. There's so many other players that you have to think are going to be in contention, and for two players to just leave the field behind, I can't imagine that we would have that again.
Well, what's so enjoyable about that tournament, and it still gives me goosebumps to think about, is every athlete who wins a tournament here on the Disc Golf Pro Tour says, I just want my opponent that I'm going up against to bring their best stuff as well. And when you have two players bringing their all-time best stuff on the same weekend at a major championship, at a course like this, with a gallery like this, it was just recipe for just an incredible, memorable weekend. And what was interesting was Paul, over time, has talked about his game style is changing. The way he plays disc golf is changing. We saw a really resourceful, technical player in Paul, and then we saw Eagle McMahon, no forehand, learning as he goes, moving the disc left to right, barely throwing any forehands. Just talk about maybe Paul initially, talk about Paul's play style, how it's evolved over the years.
Well, this year at the Skellefteå Open up in Sweden, he changed his form in the middle of the tournament, and the last time that we saw him do that was the World Championship. Do you recall when he took that offhand off the disc? It's like shocks the world. What kind of athlete changes their swing, mid-tournament? I mean, we hear about, major champions in golf, Jordan Spieth, changing his swing, and it taking years to get back to its previous state. And so for Paul to change it kind of mid-tournament and then run with it the next event, all PCS, he had the left arm off the disc completely. He says that it takes a little bit of speed off the disc, but it allows him to control it. And it's really interesting because we already see him discing up and slowing down, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and when he has the disc or maybe touching his offhand, a lot of times that brings that offhand forward, so then it kind of engages it a bit more. Once he begins his extension, he throws the back arm off, and then he brings it down to his side, whereas now when he leaves that off arm down by his side, there's less engagement happening, but again, it's less body parts moving. So I can understand where Paul can sacrifice that for a little bit more accuracy because he already has such a dialed release point. And the funny thing is, he is thinking about the next few years of his career as he's molding his play style today. He talked about it during the press conference that he actually thinks about, wear and tear on his body, and that's why he's been able to be successful for all these years. We have so many players, Eagle McMahon including, getting injured early on in their career, and it's clear that Paul thinks about that. We did talk to him at the press conference about this very thing. Let's hear what he had to say.
Can I throw as hard as, and put as much effort as someone like Eagle McMahon on forehands or backhands? Yeah, of course. Like back in 2008, I actually won the world distance competition, so I did that. I had fun with that, and I threw as far as I could, but that wasn't going to help me win tournaments. I felt like that was just going to put more stress on my body. If I go out there and throw the disc 85% or 90%, I'm going to be throwing it 500 feet, and that's really what you need on these courses. We play some golf courses where you might need more, but as we've moved to those golf courses, you see a lot more injuries to these players. So I think it's kind of I look at each year individually. It's like a war. And each tournament's kind of a battle, and you want to win the war, not the battle. So some of these courses, I might lean on a roller more just to save energy and save my body versus trying to rip 500-600 feet each shot.
It's interesting that he mentioned his world distance title all those years back, just reminding us that he had the elite distance and might still have pretty elite distance in the tank. Obviously, I don't think he's a slouch in the distance category, but he just chooses not necessarily to do that.
Yeah, Brian, I was stunned. I did not actually know that he won in 2008, but I feel like he's always been a player who we've underestimated the distance just because that's not what he's trying to do. He's trying to play golf, and he's not trying to rip hard. And this is honestly one of the courses where I don't even think about distance out here. I mean, there's a few holes like hole 10 and the next hole 11 where a 500-foot hyzer can help you out, but the rest of this course, it's so scoreable for anyone that's throwing 100 meters, 120 meters, and And I think Paul's just ready to shape discs.
Well, you think about Owen Scoggins in the FPO division. She knows the landing zone distances. It's not like you have to be throwing 450-foot hyzers in that division to get to these landing zones. In an MPO, we rarely see a par 4 where 500 feet is required to get to a landing zone. So yes, he's picking apart these holes by distance and playing more intelligently, putting less strain in his body, which over 4 rounds obviously gives him the edge as we're coming down the stretch. But Eagle McMahon, you and I on the other side, we commentated on him parking a 700-foot hole a couple years ago out at the Match Play Championships in Pennsylvania. And this is a player who's starting to go through his own metamorphosis.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And last week, here at PCS, he struggled. He definitely struggled. But to see him in the final round make a bit of a comeback, find himself on the podium, it says a lot, because honestly, this course is not too different as far as the technical gaps off the tee and the OB around the green. We see a lot of that out here. And yesterday during the President's Cup, we got a glimpse at Eagle, and he struggled early on. Bogey on 1, bogey on 2, and we saw him yesterday. Actually, we were both curious whether or not he was going to pull out that power forehand on the second and the 9th potentially, and we saw him go with the roller there on 2. So I'm still waiting for the Cloudbreaker forehand to emerge again.
Well, I think it's just a new release point. I mean, it's almost like if you're throwing a 400-foot hyzer forehand, you want to go back to that old form that feels easy. What he's doing now is a little bit more forced, but it's kind of necessary in order to preserve the body. But again, this is the defending champion, and he won without his full skill set last year. So I think this year, after working on the backhand and dialing in some of the more finesse-oriented lines, moving that disc left to right, we could see him have a really nice weekend yet again. Again, there's only a handful of players that I could say out here that when it comes major time, they dial into kind of a different dimension, so to speak. So Eagle is definitely one of those players. We did hear from Eagle as well at the press conference. Let's take a listen.
It feels really special. Yesterday I came out and played the course for the first time since last year. Definitely a special feeling out there walking the fairways, and I'll just say the place looks great.
Talked about the lefty so much last year. You did so well in hole number 2 with it. Is there any maintenance happening with the lefty backhand these days? Are you putting in any intentional practice?
I would say not really. It's more, let me throw a few shots here and there lefty to maybe see if it's improving, and it actually does. Like, if you'll be surprised by throwing just a little bit here, a little bit there, how you can gain a little bit distance and at least keep it as an option. I really would like to put more work into it, because I really do believe that it could be advantageous in the future to be ambidextrous to a certain degree.
It's nice to remember how young Eagle still truly is. He's been on the road competing at the top level for so long. And just for him to say, in years to come, I might be ambidextrous. Who knows? That's refreshing for us as spectators and commentators to hear.
Yeah, I hope we see an ambidextrous athlete, emerge in disc golf. I think some people kind of feel like it's inevitable, but what other sport do you see that? I mean, you got Shohei in baseball, batting lefty and throwing righty, and it's not common at all. Mm-hmm. So to see him pull that out last year was kind of game changing for a lot of people. I think people are now starting to think that, wait, do I have to do that to keep up with these pros? So I hope we see an ambidextrous athlete emerge.
Well, you have to just get tournament experience, and clearly Eagle did that at the European Open last year. But let's actually jump back to yesterday. Eagle did play in the President's Cup. But in general, let's recap a really tight race between the U.S. and Europe.
Oh, it was so stressful. I mean, you could just see the release with Sexton went down the stretch when, Larry had a chance to take Paul, and it was kind of fitting that it was up to MacBeth to capitalize for the U.S. and came down to 17. Laurie didn't get up and down, and then with a birdie on 18, he could have pushed the match with Paul and taken it down. So, it's cool, Brian, because this President's Cup, it's really built up, and it's this big show, and then you get out there, and it's just 9 holes of stroke play and then 9 holes of match play, but yet it still feels like this kind of prestigious deal.
Well, yeah, and it's historic. I talked to Avery Jenkins yesterday, who was here in 2006, played for that very first President's Cup team, and yeah, it's just, in the beginning, it was just sharing the game. Two continents and 2 countries sharing the game with each other, and I think that's a huge deal in itself because, again, we have to remember, we are still a grassroots community that really started this whole thing up from nothing. So in the beginning, it started with camaraderie, and now over the years, as we've gotten to the 11th edition of the President's Cup, the victory starts to feel a little bit more exciting. I remember even just looking at the gallery on hole 18, how deflated they felt. They thought they were so close to taking down that first victory and deflating the U.S. going into the major championship. You can see how much it means to the players and the spectators alike, and I think there's nothing like it, and I hope we do more to expand on this event in the future.
And 2 players from the President's Cup that I'd like to talk about is Isaac Robinson and Ricky Wysocki. We'll start with Isaac. 6 down on the 9 holes that they played yesterday with a bogey. And he walked by this Tournament Central booth and he looked at us. You said 6 down, and Isaac goes, "Yeah, Brian, with a bogey." You know, he was proud of it. It's one of those things that they're not going to go out there and not put their focus in it. They're not going to try and throw their best shots. And Isaac really showed up in the wind, hitting those putts. And if he can find that state like he found at the Champions Cup, he is absolutely in contention here. And then we move over to Ricky Wysocki. And I have to ask you, does his play yesterday make you concerned at all about his chances?
He's been up and down at majors. I don't think we can put him in the same category as Paul, as someone who laser focuses when it's major time. I know Ricky had the run in 2016, 2017, taking down the World Championships, but they kind of elude him a little bit, and the European Open has eluded him a little bit. We've seen him come so close and then final round not necessarily cut it. So we'll just have to see. This whole year he's been kind of a wild card because we don't truly know how he's even feeling because of the Lyme disease flare-ups, and how much do you really want to let on to the media? You know, how much do you want to put out there in the public eye? How much do you want people talking about it rather than just showing up to the course and doing your best? So I don't necessarily know. We'll just have to see. We are going to take a quick commercial break. We will see you on the other side.
What makes the Halal Guys so deliciously different? You might have heard of our famously long cart lines in NYC fans happily stand in. Today, with over 100 plus restaurants across the globe, we are your place to experience authentic American halal. Enjoy our delicious falafel, Euro sandwich, platters, and sides topped with our famously flavorful white and hot sauces. Order online today and taste how we make different so delicious. The Halal Guys, bringing something deliciously different to the table.
One of my favorite memories growing up was a trip I took with my dad to Hawaii. We just got done with a round of disc golf and decided to listen to the Grateful Dead. Without saying anything, we both knew we needed to dance, and that's exactly what we did. Sometimes you just need to stop and enjoy the music.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at the scores here. Jessica Weiss, Anniken Sten up top here early on, 1 down. But really the player that I want to talk about going into today is Katrina Allen, coming off of the victory at the Preserve, now coming over here overseas. She loves being here in Finland. Nate, what do you think Katrina's chances are this week taking down another major victory?
I think that her chances are as good as they've been in a couple years. You know, we haven't seen her play that level of golf since Vegas, and it was an incredible performance, especially after taking that public stance and putting all that extra just extra stuff in the mind, you know, and we got to speak with her about that, and she said that it did affect her and that it did kind of elevate her play and make her focus a little bit more. And you know, last week she dug herself a hole early at PCS and wasn't ever really in contention. But if we look at her stats, she still played some high-level golf, and she still is finding her putt in Circle 1, and that's what's limited her in the past. So, yeah, I think Katrina's chances are as good as they've been since, you know, the last Worlds that she took down.
Well, I agree with you. I think a player like her who's been able to not only deal with the pressures of constantly being a top player year after year, but she's changing her swing even more so than anybody else. We're talking about Paul MacBeth changing his form and Eagle changing his form, but Katrina's been going through a genuine backhand swing change, studying form of her old videos, trying to find that old technique back when she was winning world titles in 2014 and then 2021. But she's able to come back from that and take down a victory at the Preserve. I think there's a new level of focus coming from her, and it's just astounding how long and solid her career has been, virtually injury-free as well. So I think she has good chances this week. We actually talked to Katrina, and let's listen to what she had to say.
I actually will never forget getting second place at Worlds in 2012. I think it stayed with me. That was probably one of my first career big losses. I had shot my, to this day, highest rated round in the semifinals to come back from quite a deficit, and then lost pretty much on the last few holes, or last hole. But you are correct. You do learn from those situations, and I think the thing I always take away is more than likely I played scared and tried not to lose instead of, I heard a golfer talking, and she's like, you need to practice like it's the end of the world, or like it means everything, and you need to play like it doesn't matter.
Well, it's an interesting paradox having to not care about results, but then also care deeply about your performance to get those results. But it's just amazing to see some of these athletes continue year after year to improve mentally and physically. Before we jump into the action, round one of the major, Nate, I'm sure you're excited to get out there and take a look at the action, but what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts, again, is I want some of these athletes to put the pressure on Kristin early. I don't want this to be a walk in the park. I want it to be a battle from start to finish. I'm looking at Silva, Missy, Katrina. I'm looking at Eveliina and Henna, and I want them to score quick while these conditions are ripe.
Well, you are right about that. Prime scoring conditions right now in round one. We are going to wrap things up and send it out there to the ground. For Tournament Central, I'm Brian Earhart, joined with Nate Perkins. We'll see you out there.